Hello everyone, today I'll be presenting a macroeconomics overview using South Korea as our case study. We'll explore key economic concepts like GDP, inflation, fiscal and monetary policy, and how these play out in the real world through South Korea's dynamic and export-driven economy. Economic resources. Economists group resources into four types: land, labor, capital, and entrepreneurship. In South Korea, land is limited and natural resources are scarce, but they developed a highly skilled labor force and strong capital infrastructure, especially in tech and manufacturing. Entrepreneurship is thriving, especially in sectors like e-commerce and green energy. Opportunity cost. Opportunity cost is the value of the next best alternative when a decision is made. For example, South Korea has limited farmland, so it focuses on producing high-value goods like microchips instead of agricultural products. This decision reflects an opportunity cost, but one that has contributed to the economic success. Factors that shift supply and demand. Supply and demand curves shift when underlying conditions change. In South Korea, demand for electronics has surged globally, which increases demand for semiconductors. Supply can shift due to technology for material costs. A tech breakthrough can increase supply, while higher energy prices might reduce it. Components of GDP. GDP consists of consumption, investment, government spending, and net exports. In South Korea, net exports are a major contributor, with many companies like Samsung and Hyundai driving growth. While domestic consumption is strong, exports has been the backbone for GDP for decades in South Korea. Consumer Price Index, or CPI. The Consumer Price Index measures changes in the price of a typical basket of goods and services and is a key indicator of inflation. South Korea's central bank watches the Consumer Price Index closely, aiming to keep inflation around 2%. Rising prices can hurt consumers. So, Consumer Price Index is vital for policy decisions within South Korea. Natural rate of unemployment. The natural rate of unemployment includes frictional and structural employment. Even in a healthy economy, some employment is normal. In South Korea, the overall unemployment rate is low, but a youth unemployment remains a concern due to job mismatches and high competition. Global economy's impact. South Korea is deeply tied to the global economy. Its success in exports means it benefits from global demand, but it's also a vulnerable risk like trade wars or supply chain issues. Events like the US-China trade conflict and the COVID-19 pandemic have affected its economy significantly. We are currently looking at what could be a bigger risk with the current tariff war going on in the US. Monetary policy. Monetary policy involves adjusting interest rates and money supply to influence the economy. South Korea's central bank uses interest rates to control inflation or stimulate growth. During COVID, they lowered rates to encourage borrowing and keeping the economy moving. Fiscal policy. Fiscal policy refers to government spending and taxation. South Korea uses fiscal policy during the pandemic and now to provide certain benefits. During the pandemic, they used these policies to provide stimulus payments and increase healthcare funding. More recently, they focused on investing in green energy and digital infrastructure to drive their future growth. Federal Reserve. The Bank of Korea uses three main tools. open market operations, or buying and selling of government bonds, reserve requirements, which is how much banks must keep in their reserve, and the discount rate, or the interest charged to banks. These tools help control inflation and ensure financial stability for the future. Natural resources and sustainability. South Korea lacks major natural resources, so sustainability is key. The country has committed to net zero emissions by 2050, investing in hydrogen fuel, solar energy, and smart grids. Sustainability isn't just environmental, it's also an economic strategy to reduce import dependence. Labor market, discrimination, and diversity. Despite progress, South Korea still faces labor market inequality. The gender pay gap is one of the highest amongst developed nations. The government is now encouraging diversity in hiring and addressing discrimination to improve social equity and long-term productivity. Comparative advantage and trade. The theory of comparative advantage explains why countries benefit from trade. South Korea specializes in tech products like semiconductors and automobiles, where it has a global edge. It imports what it cannot produce efficiently, such as oil and raw materials, allowing it to maximize efficiency and growth. Aggregate supply and demand. Aggregate supply and demand models help us understand the economy as a whole. For example, during the COVID crisis, both supply and demand dropped sharply in South Korea. The government used fiscal and monetary tools to push demand back up and stabilize the economy.